Perfect. We are live. So hello everyone watching and then not watching. You can go ahead and watch the recording afterwards, but I have Anton with me, the CEO of Mercury Resources. We are a joint venture with Mercury, but I kind of want to hand it off to him to give himself more of a background, a brief career history and kind of, how we form that partnership with our side, Beemac Logistics. So hand it off to you, Anton.
Thanks, Sydney. Great to be here. Really great to be able to do the LinkedIn Live with you, our first one. So hopefully not the last. There'll be plenty of updates in the future on all kinds of issues that we'll be talking about today. So
yes.
Hi everybody. Hello from Sarasota, beautiful sunny Sarasota County, Florida. Down here now. I'm a New Yorker that finally escaped, and no more shoveling snow. So here I am. So great to be with you. So as Sydney said, I'll give a quick intro. I'm Anton Posner, the CEO of the Mercury Group and Mercury Resources, a strategic joint venture partner with Beemac Logistics. So some background on me, and I'll get into background on the company. As I mentioned, I'm a New Yorker. I graduate of New York Maritime College at Fort Schuyler in the Bronx. Came out as a merchant marine officer and a Navy Reserve officer. Navy paid for part of school. New York Maritime College, for those of you who might not be familiar with it, is a school, State University of New York school that produces ships officers, 4-year college, come out with a bachelor's degree, and you get your Coast Guard merchant marine third mates or third assistant engineers license, so you can go to sea as a ship's officer on cargo ships, on commercial ships. Navy paid for part of my school, so I also was a Navy Reserve officer and owed the Navy. I was at six years as a reserve officer and did a couple of extra then too. My business partner, Margot Brock, was our president and chief operating officer, is also New York Maritime College grad. She was a few years behind me. So we both have come from that same background, and that kind of led us into the transportation and shipping and maritime sector and put us into this crazy world of commodities, trade, and supply chain management. So had a bunch of jobs over the years in different companies in logistics and steamship lines and container shipping and so forth before Margot and I established the Mercury Group and Mercury Resources and started operations at Mercury in 2018. So, Sydney, you want me to give a little background and
Yeah, I was just going to say, I know Beemac Logistics, our bread and butter is more truckload, LTL, I mean, specifically flatbed, but kind of dive into, what does Mercury do? How does that joint venture come together on what you guys handle on your side?
Yeah, great. Exactly. And so with Beemac Logistics being focused on the truck freight side of the business, and I'll get into like how that fit in, it was a perfect partnership for us at the Mercury Group, and I'll explain why. So Mercury Group, we focus on global supply chain management for industrial commodities. So that includes ocean freight, bulk, non-containerized bulk, and break bulk ocean freight, along with our other joint venture partners at IFCOR Galbraith, which is one of the world's largest ship brokerage companies that in both dry and liquid cargoes. Some other of our former colleagues, we all kind of came out of an old company, kind of an alumni association there. So with IFCOR Galbraith, we provide global ocean freight. So our ocean freight operations that Mercury is involved in with our partners at IFCOR Galbraith include examples: copper concentrates loading out of Chile going to Finland, bauxite loading in Jamaica and transshipping into large Cape-sized vessels, 175,000 ton ships moving to China of bauxite. Steel parcels, we're working on steel cargoes from Vietnam into the U.S. Potash in bulk loading off West Coast Canada out of Vancouver and Portland, Oregon, going to fertilizer markets in South America and Asia. So that's our ocean, kind of a quick brief overview on what we're up to on global ocean freight there. And then the Mercury Group and Mercury Resources has extensive inland logistics operations
Mhm.
throughout the U.S. and Canada. So in the U.S. and Canada, we provide barge freight on the Mississippi River system and the Ohio River system. So all of the connected inland waterways there. So barge freight operations are a big part of our business. Rail freight operations throughout the U.S. and Canada. We always like to say we're the easy button for rail freight. We make rail
Mhm.
freight easy for our clients. We provide the day-to-day, the grunt work, the pricing, the follow-through, the problem solving, the problem prevention, and so forth that we do for rail freight. Sometimes rail freight can be a little bit challenging, so we make it
Mhm.
easy for our clients. Port stevedore contracting is a big part of our business too. We work on behalf of our clients, negotiating and putting in place agreements and contracts with stevedoring companies to work ships, load and discharge vessels and barges throughout the maritime system of the U.S. and Canada, including the inland waterways. Um,
Mhm.
of course, as you noticed, truck freight is not something that I mentioned that was part of the Mercury Group's
Yes.
business, and that's why it was such a great partnership with a world-class operation of Beemac Logistics and Beemac Trucking,
Mhm.
being able to provide that additional service to our client base, and boy, it took off from day one.
Oh, it did. Yes. And I want to kind of dive deeper into that just about our partnership. On our side, our logo is, relationships move loads, one store, one goal, to kind of emphasize how important it is to build those relationships and trust with our customers, our shippers. So
Mhm.
you say that Mercury is different and that Mercury is a fiduciary for your clients. So I just kind of want you to dive into, your guys' mission statement and just more onto that side.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, why Mercury? And you're right. I always say Mercury is different. We say Mercury is different, right? The way we work for our clients is as a fiduciary. In
Mhm.
fiduciary meaning we represent our clients when we're in the market, putting together costing, when we're managing the business, problem preventing and organization and day-to-day grunt work that goes into it. We're working as an agent and as a representative of our clients. So what we don't do is add mystery margins on top of what we're doing on rail freight and barge freight and stevedoring and so forth. We work on a separate management fee basis vast majority of the time, and that way we are out fighting for our clients, making sure that what we're putting in place for them is what's best. When we can negotiate savings for
Mhm.
our clients in any of these areas, whether it's ocean freight or barge freight and rail freight, those savings are passed through to our clients, not put in our pocket because we have some hidden margin on the business. So it really puts us in the right uh, context for negotiating and representing our clients because uh, we're not hiding revenue
Mhm.
into various parts of the supply chain there, and what we do on our inland logistics and ocean freight operations. So that's what I
Mhm.
mean when I say we're a fiduciary in that instance. I should give you want me to give a little bit of on the JV and Mercury Transportation Solutions?
Yes, I was just gonna say, kind of dive more into. I know we already mentioned it was kind of from an alumni corporation, how we came together.
Mhm.
You guys specialize barge, rail, ocean. We
Right.
specialize truckload, but kind of dive more into how did that partnership come about and the creation of the Mercury transportation side.
Yeah. So as Sydney said, we established Mercury Transportation Solutions, which is the joint venture entity between the Mercury Group and BMAC Logistics. So Mercury Transportation Solutions, the managing director is Brian Kosteff, who's based down in Houston, good former Marine.
Mhm.
And he heads up the operation operationally. Brian is a general partner and shareholder in the joint venture. Also, Brian, also like myself, like my business partner Margot, like Rich Casoli from Beemac Logistics. We all came out of a company years ago where we spent a good amount of our time, and that's why I refer to us as the alumni. Also, in addition to the guys, several of the people from our ocean freight team at IFCOR Goldbrace are also fellow alumni. So we had a working relationship together. Some of us grew up together in a good way, is a good way to describe it. And when Brian came to us with the idea of forming the joint venture and creating Mercury Transportation Solutions with him at the helm. So the way it's structured, Brian heads up the business. He's working, as I mentioned, business development and operations and problem solving. And there are several Beemac logistics operations people that are assigned to work with Brian and Mercury Transportation Solutions, or MTS, what we call it for short. So I always describe it too as the engine room behind the joint venture, and the engine room behind MTS is the Beemac logistics team that doing the grunt work. So we really tap into that, into the Beemac logistics for truck freight, and then when there's barge and rail and other parts of the supply chain that MTS brings to the table, then sometimes it's Mercury Resources. That's the engine room behind the business. So.
Exactly. And I mean, I was just going to say, both sides, you guys are the strategic leaders in the logistics space and have years of experience and those partnerships. So let's dive into it. I know that the body of this is more focusing on logistics trends, the tariff impacts, and then it kind of tied into, how to stay ready. So tariffs, I know, especially on the ocean freight side, because we're focusing more towards Mercury and kind of the challenges, solutions on that end. What are some challenges that you've been seeing in that area, and or even opening other opportunities as well?
Yeah. So, I think you'd have to really be hiding in a cave, right, to avoid any news about what's going on in terms of trade, U.S. trade, global trade at this point. So, of course, we're all rolling with the punches at this point in terms of what's coming out of Washington on tariffs and trade. The current administration, of course, is focused on the noble goal of bringing back manufacturing jobs and strengthening America's hand in terms of manufacturing and trade agreements. So right now, there's a lot of confusion in terms of where we're at on import tariffs on goods from overseas in different categories. There's been 25% tariffs levied on steel and aluminum, for example, and we're seeing two very different outcomes of that. It's a good example right now. Take the steel side. The domestic steel mills, American steel mills, have taken advantage of the fact that import steel is getting charged with a 25% tariff, and those domestic American steel mills have increased their prices so significantly to take advantage of that import steel can absorb those tariffs and still make sense and compete. So we're seeing quite a bit of activity on import steel of various types at this point, because if the domestic steel mills are going to raise their prices, then overseas producers can still compete and take advantage of that.
Right.
Sorry.
So I was just going to say, you're kind of discussing the latest tariffs, I mean, specifically on steel, aluminum, and which you're probably going to dive more into, but in other areas, I mean, especially when it comes to the freight that we work with mostly, do you see any exemptions in these areas, or kind of dive more into I know, like you said, there's a lot of things going on. So have you seen the absolute latest tariffs as well on top of
it? Yeah, it depends what time is it, right? Something could have vastly changed in the 5 minutes since you and I've been on the LinkedIn Live, right? It comes fast and furious, and there's a lot of comments made. One of the challenges is the administration coordinating their story, right? Getting their act together in terms of the messaging that's being put out. Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, will be on Bloomberg 1 minute in the morning, and then President will say something different later on, and then the press secretary, Caroline Levitt, will say something completely different later on in the afternoon. So deciphering this is challenging. And let's take for example, I was reading a Wall Street Journal article this morning on the automakers. Right, the automakers are bringing in parts. Right, a lot of some U.S. made cars consist of foreign auto parts that are made in Canada, made in Mexico, or other parts. So there was an exemption given by the administration to automakers that exempted them from tariffs on these parts as long as the final product was a certain percentage of overall American made, right? But there was no detail given as to what it meant by that U.S. origin, right, or whatever the wording was in that exemption. So the automakers are leaving money on the table because they're paying the full tariff now on these parts that are coming in, and they're not exactly sure what's exempt. So they're feeling like they're leaving money on the table that they could be filing for exemptions on those tariffs, but that are being paid at this point. So when you have such a sweeping approach to trade and tariffs on every country in the world, almost every country in the world, right? Russia was exempt, but from new tariffs, even though we have still billions of dollars of imports from Russia, but it takes an infrastructure, government infrastructure, to be able to keep up and enforce those tariffs and explain and guide and have a help desk that people can reach out to understand where they might have exemptions and where they have basically how to navigate all this, right? So right now we're seeing just a lot of confusion on what's going on, adding to the overall situation, right, which is economic issues in respect to paying the tariffs on imported goods.
Exactly. And to kind of focus in on specific countries that we trade with, because I know you mentioned, almost every country is expected to have that tariff charge or tariff raise. But what about around, I know we were talking about previously a couple of days ago about the ports from China. So what are the talks around China, and then also the EU, what's going on with EU and why are they not at the table, I guess you could say.
So this is this area where it could be concerning, right? The administration has said that they're in discussions with dozens of countries. I forget what the latest count was. It was 70, it was 90 countries, right, on tariff negotiations, on new trade negotiations. But we know at the moment that China is not yet at the table. I'll go back to that. And right now, it appears that the EU, as a unified trading bloc, the European Union, is also not currently at the table in discussions, or not counted as one of these entities that the administration is currently negotiating with. Of course, that's significant, right? We know how much we trade with the European Union, so that remains to be seen. The biggest challenge, I think, at the moment for the administration is China. And right now, we're in a standoff. The Chinese Foreign Ministry today, I believe, came out and said that China is ready to negotiate when they are treated with respect, and when President Trump appoints somebody that has authority, and that's a key point, right? Has authority to negotiate. One of the challenges that some of the counterparties in trade have had, right, is that the people that they're talking to in the administration don't necessarily have the authority, as President Trump
Right.
has
Yeah.
retained final say. So China is made clear about the respect issue, right? Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary, came out a couple of days ago and said, "We don't need China; China needs us," right? And
Mhm.
that Vice President had some words that didn't go over well in China. So China, those who know Asian culture, right, and I don't even pretend to, but their respect is important to
Mhm.
so.
And just going on about, negotiation, even renegotiations, we know there has to be that respect point for China. But what about the USMCA to be
Mm,
renegotiated? What do you think
right.
in that sector?
Yeah, so let's remember the history of USMCA, right? During the first
Mhm.
Trump administration, we at that time NAFTA was in effect, a trade agreement that was put in place by President Clinton back in the '90s, the North American Free Trade Agreement. President Trump came in during his first administration, said that it was unfair. There were elements of it that were problematic, and he initiated a renegotiation of NAFTA at the time during his first administration, and the end result was the USMCA, the U.S. Mexico Canada agreement that put in place new trade agreements. So at the time, President Trump touted it as fair for the U.S., a great win for the United States that President Trump had put this in place. So when President Trump came into office again for the second time this past January, we were trading under rules that President Trump's team had put in place at that
Mhm.
point. So now the new approach, he feels that what he put in place during his first administration did not result in fair trade with Canada and Mexico. So there's been certainly some friction there on the political side and the jabbing side. We'll leave that out and just focus on the hardcore, on the important facts.
Mhm.
But the concern, of course, right, is that we need to, if there's going to be a renegotiation of USMCA, to when is this going to take place? We believe there's been some discussions. There's been willingness from all sides to negotiate. What the status of
Mhm.
that negotiation is, I'm not exactly sure. There hasn't been a lot of press release that I've caught as to where things stand on USMCA renegotiation. Uh, the tariffs that President Trump put in place on Mexico and Canada, some of it were rolled back. There were some retaliatory tariffs put in place by both Mexico and Canada. Of
Mhm.
course, this is a major issue. Going back to the auto parts issue is one example. We import as the United States imports. Take potash, for example, a key ingredient in fertilizers, major import from Canada. Oil, energy, electricity that
Mhm.
comes in from Ontario into some of the northern states. And then in retaliation, right, we saw Canada removing American goods from shelves, including liquor and bourbon and whiskey, hitting
Mhm.
some key states that are politically sensitive. So there's been some acrimonious chatter on trade amongst our North American neighbors. So I think we could all say we hope for some cool, calm heads to get at the table soon. Let's air what the issues are. One of the biggest challenges Canada's had is trying to nail down what the key issue is. It started off with there's too much fentanyl coming in from the Canadian cartels, right? Or the
Mhm.
cartels of Canada. and or now then it was certain trade issues and reciprocal tariffs and the fact that the Canadian market isn't as easy for American banks to go into. So Canada, I
Mhm.
think, has been one of the challenges is Canada trying to figure out exactly what point we're trying to get across here and what we want. So yeah, time to talk.
Yes, and kind of one last section to discuss another important imports are or exporters of the coal and grain. So I know you're on Bloomberg TV a lot, and I know the last time you're talking more so about the Chinese ships and shipping, which we just
Mhm.
discussed. But in terms of coal and grain, you did express some significant issues when you were on Bloomberg, with is what being proposed and identified for the American exporters. So, what is the latest that you've been seeing specifically towards the coal and grain?
Yeah, it's a good topic to hit. I think as we head towards the end, and not drag everyone through every thought in my head, right? But
Right.
so just yesterday, I'm going to add one more element into this too, Sydney. Just yesterday, in addition to the shipping, and we'll talk about that, but the reciprocal tariffs and trade actions that China has taken in retaliation are causing some problems, right? They just yesterday, China had all their domestic airlines cancel all of their orders with Boeing. So
Mhm.
they're hitting hard at American manufacturing and union jobs, and the trickle down from a massive country nation like China canceling Boeing orders is tough, right? Of course, Airbus in Europe is going to be the biggest beneficiary of this, right? And be able to
Mhm.
supply in addition to, I think it's called Comac, which is China's homegrown aircraft manufacturing industry that's been looking to get a foothold in the global aircraft manufacturing industry. It seems like they may have their opportunity now, right? But let's look past that. In addition, China has been started to implement actions against American farmers. American farmers
Mhm.
ship an enormous amount of agricultural products, grain, wheat, soybeans, sorghum, corn that flows into China from American farmers. Enormous amount of it goes into animal feed, in addition to foodstuffs. China has shifted an enormous amount of their buying power now to Brazil as an alternative
Mhm.
to America. So that's hitting American farmers. President Trump has already started to talk about a multi-billion-dollar bailout for American farmers to provide uh, social subsistence to
Mhm.
farmers, basically because don't have an export market now. In addition, and something that we work on at Mercury Group, export coal. China has instituted reciprocal tariffs on American coal, moving American metallurgical coal, which goes into steel making, to Chinese steel mills. Has always been a big export business for American mining companies and miners. China has hit back at that now too, so it's affecting the jobs of miners and export pricing opportunities. Thankfully, there's been good domestic consumption on coal. You mentioned the shipping issue. So the U.S. Trade Representative's Office, USTR, has initiated a Section 301, I believe it's Section 301 investigation into Chinese shipping under the president's direction. The goal here is to bring American shipbuilding back to the United States. Where at this point, we build maybe a couple of ships a year.
Mhm.
China builds a few hundred ships a year, right?
Right.
Um, and to bring back American strength to the global maritime trade and shipping and national security market, where national security being able to build Navy, Coast Guard, and military vessels. Uh, Back during World War II, when America was united to fight the Axis, we were American shipyards were pumping out what they called Liberty ships at the time. I think it was like one Liberty ship every 4 or 5 days, right? It was incredible what
Mhm.
American industrial might can do when unified, and when the pieces are put in place and the leadership is in place to do that. So what USTR has suggested is putting in place these port penalties for ships that are either built in China, ships that are
Mhm.
registered in China, or to any shipping company on their ships, even if the ship is not built or registered in China, but the ship owner has ships that are built or registered in China in their fleet. So we're
Mm,
talking that encompasses just a huge amount of the global cargo ship fleet when you include all of those elements. And these port fees are range from like several $100,000 to $3 million per port call. So
right.
you have, let's say, a ship coming in to load coal in New Orleans or in Norfolk, Virginia. That's going to load 55,000 tons of coal, and that ship is now going to have to pay to the federal government a couple of $1 million penalty because that particular ship owner has one Chinese ship in its fleet someplace else in the world. That cost gets added onto the ocean freight, and it penalizes the American exporters, the
Mhm.
farmers, the mining companies, the petroleum producers that are trying to be competitive on exports. So you're talking about import goods. Sure, that's part of it too, right? Import steel, import retail goods, everything that lands on the shelves of Walmart and Target for Christmas, right, is going to be penalized. But when you look at the coal and agricultural commodity sectors, you're talking about they're dealing with not only the reciprocal tariffs and trade penalties coming out of China, right, on
Mhm.
coal, on American coal and grain, but now this potential port penalty. By the way, this is a proposal. There were hearings
Mhm.
a couple weeks ago in Washington. One of our colleagues, Divkor Galbraith, was in DC, went in person for the hearings and put out some good reports. So anyone that wants to see those reports, you can reach out to Sydney or myself on LinkedIn, and we'll get you good intel on what we're seeing. But there was an enormous amount of pushback and commentary back to USTR on this proposal because of just how
Mhm.
damaging it will be. So where it's at, rumors are out is that maybe this week we get some feedback on where things stand. We'll probably see some watered down version of this proposal coming through eventually, but it all has effect on American competitiveness. So we
Yes.
can't have a situation where we're can't trade.
Exactly. And I mean, just diving into which again, I mean, this could be a segment for 2 hours, but I highly doubt someone wants to listen to us talk for 2 hours. But like Anton
Exactly.
said, I mean, even on Mercury Resources LinkedIn page, they share and address a ton of up-to-date articles and whatnot. And I know we kind of dove into, what's happening now, the impacts and the proposals. So the kind of conclusion to this is almost how to stay ready. So I know obviously control what you can control, but what do you recommend people? I mean, specifically logistics industry, I mean, any industry, to kind of keep up with these trends. What would you say would be
Yeah.
like the best course of action?
Yeah. I look to the good bourbon I have over here next to me. That might be part of it, right over there.
Yes.
So, but anyway, we'll put the plug in for some of the bourbon. But that was my knee jerk reaction when you said that, Sydney, right? But yeah, reading, staying on top of what's going on in the news, right, and what's coming out of the administration and what's happening is critical, right? I think American and Canadian and Mexican businesses at this point, talking to all of our friends and colleagues throughout North America here, right? If you're not paying attention to what's going on in trade and in business, I mean, it's going to affect everything, right? Every time we go to the
Mhm.
supermarket or 7-Eleven at this point, we're going to be dealing with the effects of trade of the trade war essentially that's going on right now, and that's a phrase right that the president's using at this point. So
Mhm.
um, yeah, keeping on top of things, having good professional advice, good customs brokers to advise as to what the current regulations are, and that can navigate you through how to deal with import regulations. If you're importing, good logistics partners, Beemac and the Mercury Group, to be able to be reactive and quick, and making sure that your supply chains are competitive. Those that are dealing with trade issues that are significantly affecting their business also need good representation, no doubt. Good trade attorneys, good legal representation when they need to be able to decipher what's going on at a higher level. But biggest thing, right, is paying attention and staying up. I think anyone that's running a business these days are responsible commercially for their business, cannot afford to not be up to date and very much tapped into global affairs right now.
Right. And I mean, this is just a glimpse to understand, you being the CEO of Mercury Resources, like, you are a valid person and trustworthy leader to understand what's going on and stay up to date. And, this is why we're partners over here at Beemac Logistics. We really stress towards, keeping up with technological advancements, AI, understanding what's going on in the market, and even tariffs. So I just have to say, thank you so much for coming on here. I think this was a good opportunity to, there's so many articles, so many news stories, and it's just a lot easier to hear it from a professional to kind of generally give the message towards what's happening right now. So I really appreciate you coming on here, and we'll definitely have a lot more episodes to come of LinkedIn Lives. Even get Margot on here too.
Yeah, I definitely got to get Margot on soon. Absolutely. Yeah, big thanks for having me on, Sydney. This was fun. Loved it, and here for you anytime.
Yeah, thank you so much, Anton.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.